battles of the American Revolution. And each of the battles had about maybe a year or 2 years difference between them. And the first battle that we are going to be talking about today is the Battle of Bunker Hill. On June 16th, 1775, 1,200 colonists spent the night building a fort made of dirt and also of logs. And the British soldiers were surprised to see a fort instead of sheep and cows. And they started to shoot cannons at Breed's Hill. Now, here's the thing. It's called the Battle of Bunker Hill, but the battle was actually fought on Breed's Hill. And the British started marching up the hill, and Colonel Prescott knew his men. Okay, Colonel Prescott was for the Continental Army. He knew his men only had about 15 rounds of ammunition each. Now, knowing that they would have to make every single shot that they fired count, he gave them the most famous advice. Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. So if you were to look at anybody in your group's eyes, are you far enough or too far away to see the whites of their eyes? So think about that. Being that you're sitting in groups and you're looking at each other, you're pretty close, you can see the whites of their eyes. So that's what he meant, to wait till the British were really, really close by, that you could see the whites of their eyes, and then fire. Now, the British soldiers had to hike up a hill through the thick grass, carrying about 125 pounds of equipment under the sun, okay? So this was June 16th. So as we know, when we're dealing with the weather and everything, especially in the summer's hot. Especially around that time in June, it gets very, very hot. So imagine having to wear a uniform, going up a steep hill, carrying 125 pounds of ammunition, 225 pounds of equipment. The British were marching in nice, neat rows, which basically made them very easy targets for the Continental Army. And that was because the generals of the British Army thought that was the most honorable way to fight. And they were marching right up to the front of the fort. All over Boston, thousands of people stood watching from church steeples and the roofs of houses. The British soldiers marched to within about 100 feet of the fort, and they just kept on coming. 90 feet, 80 feet, 70 feet. Then the American guns started to explode. The British were blown backwards. The Americans cheered and waved their hats as the surviving British soldiers tripped down the hill. The British officers told their men to turn around and attack again. Once again, they were driven back down the hill a second time. So the British charged up the hill, meaning that they ran up the hill. Okay, they walked very, very fast. They ran, and they finally captured the fort after that time. Now, on this particular day, 1,000 British soldiers were shot at. Now, even though most of the fighting took place on Breed's Hill, this battle is known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, but no one really seems to know why. But the important thing to remember is that the Americans were proud of the battle. Even though they lost, facing those brutal British charges gave the Americans badly needed confidence. And it proved to them that they could fight the British and possibly win. Okay, now the battle in New York and New Jersey. Okay, so the British had invaded New York City August 22nd, 1776. And the Americans were actually able to escape without the British seeing them because that particular day was very, very foggy. Now, a man named Nathan Hale, who was a patriot, volunteered to spy on the British. Okay. And he was relaying information from the British to the colonists, to the Continental Army, letting them know what their strategy was, what they were planning on doing. When he was discovered, though, when he was discovered to be a spy for the colonists, he was hanged by the British. And there was a rumor that went around that his last words were, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." What do you think that means? I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country. I want you guys to think about that, what that might mean. Now, the Battle of Trenton, George Washington was put in command of the Continental Army. And he decided on December 26th of the same year, 1776, he decided to cross the Delaware River the day after Christmas because that was a very, very important holiday that the British celebrate. And still today in the United States, we celebrate Christmas. A lot of people celebrate Christmas. And so on the 25th, they didn't battle. They didn't fight. Okay, it was about spending time with those that were there for them, with their troops, with their fellow soldiers. So they decided to do that now. Fighting alongside the British, okay, just like the Continental Army, the French fought along with them. The Germans, who were also known as the Hessians, fought alongside the British. So Washington knew that the Hessians were camped in Trenton, New Jersey. That was a really, really big area that the British had basically found sanction in and were able to live there and really control everything that was going on. So he had the plan, hey, how about the day after Christmas? They're probably going to be, unable to really fight. They probably were, having a lot of fun, eating a lot and, staying up late. Let's surprise them on December 26th. So this battle, okay, so that's exactly what they did. They surprise attacked them, and the Continental Army won that particular battle. And this particular battle gave them a lot of confidence that they knew that they could win the war. Okay, now the Battle of Saratoga in 1777. Okay, so General Bourgogne, he was a very popular soldier and officer, okay, for the British. And he said the British are going to win the American Revolution by attacking New York from the north and also from the south. And they thought that this would split the colonies into two. Okay? So they were planning on going to New York, and they were going to move in from the north and also from the south. Now, the British captured Fort Ticonderoga, but it was slow moving. And General Howe decided to capture Philadelphia instead of following Bourgogne's plan. Okay, so General Howe, he was also British. He didn't believe in General Bourgon's plan, so he decided to do his own thing, and that was to capture Philadelphia. Now, a Polish general who was helping the Continental Army named Thaddeus Kosciuszko, and he designed a fort at Saratoga. And George Washington decides to send one of his best soldiers, Horatio Gates, to help with Saratoga. Now, Benedict Arnold and Gates argued about the different war tactics to use. Benedict Arnold thought that they should use guerrilla warfare, which is when they surprise attack um, their enemy. Okay, where they hide behind trees or bushes, and they just come right out without them knowing and basically surprise attack them, which ruined the British plan. And Benedict Arnold, even though he didn't want to follow Gates's orders, he led the group to battle the British, and they won. And they actually got their victory, and also they arrested the British Army. Now, General Gates took credit for Benedict Arnold's plan at the Battle of Saratoga. And Benedict Arnold was actually stuck in the hospital recovering from a wound he had gotten from the battle. And Arnold got upset because Gates started taking all the credit, even though it wasn't his to take. It was actually Benedict Arnold's. So, has that ever happened to you where somebody asks, you, where you have a plan or you do something and then somebody else takes credit for it entirely? It's happened, and it doesn't make you feel good. So, we'll talk a little bit more about Benedict Arnold a little bit later. Okay, now the Battle of Yorktown. So King George had decided that he was going to go to Georgia and to South Carolina because he was tired of the war. And the British and the people in Britain were getting tired of the war. Plus, it was costing him a lot of money to constantly be sending troops, constantly be sending supplies and equipment. So he just wanted it to be over. So his plan was, let's go to the southern states, and they can't say anything about it. So what happened was the British, their strategy was going very, very well. However, the southern colonists really did not like having the British soldiers there because the soldiers were stealing different things from their home. They were just walking in and taking food, taking clothing, taking anything and everything that they could get their hands on. And there wasn't a single thing that they could say about it. Now, the Continental Army went to Yorktown, which is in Virginia, and that was to move soldiers between New York and Virginia. And this particular plan of his caused a lot of chaos and really confused the British because they thought that the Continental Army was setting up to stay in New York City. And that was George Washington's plan. He actually even had people setting up ovens that made it look like they were going to have a camp around there. So the British kind of wanted to stay in that particular area because they thought for sure the Continental Army was going there. And this put the British into a trap. And along with the help of their allies, the French, the Continental Army surrounded the British by land, and the French army surrounded them by water. the British began to run low on supplies, and then on October 19th, 1781, the British finally surrendered. And September 3rd, 1783, so 2 years after this, the American Revolution officially ended with the signing of a peace treaty in Paris. Okay, and that is all for right now. And we are going to continue talking about this a little bit more and filling in our ISNs.